right, hey guys. So this is video number 2 for the week of May 11th. This video also, oops, I have a line and not a pen tool. Hang on, let me undo. This also has to do with dividing radicals. But this is very different than what you learned in video 1, where you just multiply by a single term in the denominator. So this method you're going to use when you have two terms in the denominator. The numerator does not matter. There could be one term, two terms, six terms in the numerator. It's the denominator that you have to worry about. So when you have two terms in the denominator and at least one has a radical, when that happens, what you're going to do is multiply by something called the conjugate. And what that is, the conjugate is the denominator with the middle sign changed. So the first thing I want to do is just go through and give you examples of what a conjugate would look like. And when you're changing this sign, you're changing it to the opposite. Middle sign changed. So if it's added, you're going to subtract. If it's subtracted, you're going to add. Okay. So here's a couple examples. If you are given radical 3 over 2 minus radical 6. Now remember, numerator, the top part, this one does not matter. What matters is if there's two terms in your denominator, which there are here, 2 is one term and the negative radical 6 is another, then the conjugate here is the denominator with the middle sign change. So 2, you change this sign from a negative to a positive, and the conjugate here is 2 plus rad 6. Okay, here's another example. If you're given 5 over negative 4 plus radical 5, the conjugate is negative 4 minus radical 5. Again, the only thing that changes is this middle sign. Okay, the sign out front stays the same. The values of the numbers stay the same. The only thing that changes is that middle sign right there when you write the conjugate. Okay, let's do one more. It'll look a little bit different. If you are given 3 plus radical 2 over a minus radical 3, the conjugate here is a plus radical 3. Okay, denominator with the middle sign changed, flip to the opposite value. All right, so what you're going to do, let's show you how we're going to deal with these. What you are going to do, if you are given a problem that looks like this, radical 6 over 2 minus radical 8. What you're going to do to deal with this is multiply by a new fraction. Oops, I combined two things in one word. Multiply by a new fraction. That new fraction is going to be the conjugate over the conjugate, okay, which equals 1, right? If you multiply something over or divide something divided by itself is always equal to 1. So this is what you're going to multiply by, and then we're going to simplify. So in this problem, the conjugate is the denominator with the middle sign change. So 2 plus radical 8, 2 plus radical 8. And then I mentioned last time, if you have 2 or more terms, you should put parentheses around them. So we're going to distribute on the top, FOIL on the bottom. Okay, so if I distribute on the top, I get 2 radical 6, and then plus rad 48. And then in my denominator, I get 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times rad 8 is 2 radical 8. And then minus 8 radical 2 is minus 2 radical 8. And then a negative rad 8 times a positive rad 8 is a negative radical 64. If you want to just put a negative 8 there, you can. I'll simplify that in the next step. So first you're going to multiply. Then you're going to simplify. And in the process of simplifying, you're simplifying radicals. And if you can, you're going to combine like terms. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. The first term on the upper left-hand side, a radical 6 only goes to a rad 3 and a rad 2, so I can't do anything with that. So the 2 rad 6 is going to stay the same. The rad 48 is a rad 16 and a 3. Rad 16 is a 4, so this becomes plus 4 radical 3. In my denominator, the point of multiplying by a conjugate is so that these two things will be the same term with a different sign, so they will cancel each other out. And this guy should be a perfect square. So we have in your denominator, you have 4 minus 8, so this is a negative 4 down here. All right, now, so in this one, you can't have no negative on the leading term in the denominator. So essentially what happens is you're going to multiply this whole thing by negative 1. So it will change the sign here to a negative. It will change the sign here to its opposite of whatever it might be. In this case, that's going to be a negative. And it will change the sign here to its opposite, making that positive. Okay? And then you need to look and see if you can, so here, this gets a little bit messy, but I'm trying to color code. So look to reduce coefficients. And it has to be all of them, all or none. And so here are my coefficients. I have a negative 2, a negative 4, and a 4. If those are all divisible by the same value, then they are reducible. So I can, in fact, divide a 2 out of these. So this would become a 1, this would become a 2, this would become a 2. And so my actual answer is going to look like negative radical 6. This one I don't need to put in there. So a negative radical 6 minus 2 radical 3 all over 2. And this is the answer to that problem. The goal, I don't think I really stated it, but your goal is to have no radical in the denominator. Okay, so that's huge. That is a big part. That's the whole point of why you're doing this. Your goal is to have no radical in the denominator at all. Okay, so here's your answer, and that is how that guy would look. Now, when we reduced up here, the yellow dots, notice I'm only reducing things out in the front. You cannot reduce into radicals. So even though it looks here like maybe you want to reduce this rad 6 by that 2, you can't do it. You can only do the numbers out front. Okay? Let's do one or two more, just as examples, and then you'll be on your way. All right, so the next one, given radical 2 over rad 10 minus radical 2. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is multiply by the conjugate, which is radical 10 plus radical 2, top and bottom. And you'll see this won't take nearly as long because now that you know what's happening, we're going to put anything with 2 or more terms in parentheses. Distribute on top. So we're going to get a rad 20 plus rad 4 over rad 10 times rad 10 is just plain 10. Then I'm going to get plus a rad 20 minus a rad 20. Rad 2 times rad 2 is just plain 2. Now, if you need to put the rad 100 for the rad 10 times rad 10 and the rad 4 for rad 2 times rad 2, do that. But I'd like you to start thinking the way that I just did there. All right, these are going to cancel. So now I'm going to reduce anything I can. The rad 20 is going to become a 2 radical 5, right? Because we have rad 4, rad 5. The rad 4 is going to be a 2. So this is 2 radical 5 plus the rad 4 is going to become a 2. And in my denominator, I have 10 minus 2 is 8. All right, coefficients in this one. You're done with the actual math. Here are your coefficients. If they contain a common GCF, you can get rid of that number. And so here we can divide out a 2. So this will become a 1, and a 4. And we don't need this one because it's a coefficient on the 5, the rad 5. So we need the rad 5. This one, however, we do need, though, because there's no radical on it and it's just a placeholder, and it's over 4. And that would be the answer to that problem. All right. So I kind of skipped a couple steps in there. Back in the green part when I foiled, and if you need to see all of those steps, you should go back, pause this video, go back, figure out what I did, and make sure that you understand all the steps moving forward. All right, this one is, I'm going to put some variables in it because I know they're in varsity. 2 rad A plus 5 over 4 plus radical A. All right, step 1, multiply by the conjugate, which is 4 minus rad A and 4 minus rad A. Now I'm going to put parens around anything with 2 or more terms. And now this time you have to FOIL both the top and the bottom. So let's see what happens when we do that. I'm going to go 2 rad A times 4. So that's 8 rad A. Remember, you're multiplying what's out front, leaving it out front of the radical. Multiply what's in the radical by what's in the radical, and that goes inside the radical. 2 rad A times a negative rad A is a minus 2 rad A squared. 5 times 4 is plus 20. 5 times negative rad A is a negative 5 rad A. Over bottom, 4 times 4 is 16. Here I get a negative 4 rad A. Here I get a positive 4 rad A. And then a rad A times a negative rad A is a negative rad A squared. All right, so let's simplify. This becomes just 2A, right? Because rad A squared is just A. I can combine, these are like terms. So 8 rad A minus 5 rad A is 3 rad A minus 2A plus 20. And none of those are like terms. They can't be combined together. Here, my 4 rad A and my negative 4 rad A will cancel each other out. Negative root of A squared is negative A. And so the bottom, I have 16 minus A. And this negative is okay. It's when there's a negative on the leading term that you have a problem. So that doesn't happen in this one. And so let me undo again. All right, and so this is our answer to this problem because you cannot combine any like terms. No more. Okay, and so the varsity assignment that goes with this is 6.6, and I'll give you due date information in the actual classroom assignment. All right, toodaloo.